Alright guys, as you can see right here is the substantia nigra. And as you guys can see, it is located right here in the midbrain. Okay guys, so this is a little better of a picture of the midbrain so you can see where it's located. So as you guys can tell by now, I was assigned the substantia nigra for my part of the brain for this film project. Okay, so substantia nigra actually means black substance in Latin, and it has this appearance because of the high levels of dopaminergic neurons in this area specifically. So with that being said, the substantia nigra plays a huge role in dopamine production. Dopamine obviously is very important because it has a lot to do with eye movement, motor control, learning, and it does also have a big role in addiction. Okay, so as we learned in class, dopamine is a part of these catecholamates. So then these catecholamates are synthesized from tyrosine. This tyrosine will then go through tyrosine hydroxylase, which then creates dopa. Then this dopa goes through the dopa decarbylase, and then that makes dopamine, and this is all in the substantia nigra, and that is why it appears much darker than the rest of the brain. So now that we know how important dopamine is and that dopamine is mainly produced in this area of the brain, let's talk about what happens when this area of the brain gets damaged. So one of the main diseases that damages the substantia nigra is Parkinson's disease. So as we can see in the normal brain up here, this black stuff is all the substantia nigra, and you can see just how black it is basically. And then in the Parkinson's brain, you can see that there's almost no black, which obviously is a big problem because the dopamine is not being produced as it should be. So as we know, this is what a normal neuron looks like. We got the neurotransmitters going into the postsynaptic cell through these receptors, and there's a healthy amount. But in Parkinson's, it basically kills and deteriorates the neurons that are in the substantia nigra. And this is basically what it'll look like. Obviously, there's still receptors on the post-synaptic neuron, but there's just not that much neuro or dopamine coming in to it. So yeah, it weakens the presynaptic neurons a lot and the production of the neurotransmitter. That's why nothing's really coming out. So because your cells look like this in the substantia nigra, you'll get symptoms of the Parkinson's disease such as tremors, where you just have a tremor. You can have impaired balance and coordination, which can lead to falling, which can further injure yourself. And you'll have muscle stiffness, where a muscle will stay contracted for a longer period of time. And then you can have trouble initiating movement. So now that we talked about what would happen if it was damaged and there's a low production of dopamine, now we can talk about what happens if there's a higher level of dopamine. And a good example of this is drugs, specifically cocaine. So as we can see in this handy dandy little diagram, the drug will enhance the dopamine production basically, and it'll block the transporters from it going back in to the presynaptic neuron, and then it'll basically all go through these receptors, and as you can see, it'll intensify the effect of dopamine. And this is very dangerous because then you'll build up a tolerance to this effect of the cocaine, and then regular dopamine output by your brain won't feel the same, and then to get that same high, I guess, you'll need to do cocaine to feel how you did when you did it the first time. And then you'll just keep building up that tolerance, and then you'll have to do more and more and more to get this same effect. And then eventually, if you try to stop, you'll go through withdrawals, which it's just a cycle that it's very hard to get off of. So yeah, basically we learned that the substantia nigra plays a very important role in dopamine production, and as we learned, dopamine has a very important role, just in our whole bodies in general. So the substantia nigra is a very important part of our brain and just a part of our whole body. And obviously dopamine plays a much bigger role than I went over in these 5 minutes. I can't go over everything, but those are just some examples of how the substantia nigra plays a role in our basically everyday life. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and that concludes my film.